Greetings everyone. We finally made it to the final exam review video. This should be the last video of the semester for this course. And what I plan to do is I plan to go through the answers to the final exam review worksheet that I sent you in Canvas. And before I forget, let me also mention that the final exam for this class will be Wednesday, May 6th, and I am going to make the final exam available pretty much all that day, all day Wednesday, May 6th. I'm thinking of making it available starting at 8 a.m. for you to find on Canvas, and I'm going to leave it available for you to access all the way until midnight on Wednesday, May 6th. So just make sure that you log into Canvas and you take the final exam for this class somewhere between 8 a.m. and midnight on Wednesday. This lecture, as I'm getting ready to start it, is for your Monday, May 4th. And without any further ado, I guess let's go ahead and take a look at the first page of your final exam review worksheet. So the idea on the first page of your review worksheet is to write out the soprano line, the bass line, and the Roman numerals for just short progressions that include the typical use of these 6 chords that are listed here. So write one progression for each chord that you choose, it says, and I started with illustrating the very first one there, the minor 3 chord. Please recall and remember that the minor 3 chord occurs in major keys, and the minor 3 chord harmonizes a descending soprano line, a soprano line that goes do, ti, la, sol. So here we have an example with just the outer voices. Here is my descending soprano line in a major key, do, ti, la, sol. And I'm doing this in C major. The bass notes, first of all, the Roman numerals to harmonize this soprano line would be 1, 3, 4, and 5. Or if you want to use a 2, 6 in the place of the 4, that would be fine. But that means your bass line should be do, mi, fa, sol. I just took my 5 chord to another 1 chord for an authentic cadence. That's not necessarily necessary for you to do, as long as you get the do, ti, la, sol in the soprano and the Roman numerals 1, 3, 4, and 5 in the bass. In order to illustrate the major 3 triad, we recall that the major 3 triad occurs only in minor keys, and we are in G minor here. And just like the other 3 chord that we just looked at, this 3 chord harmonizes a descending soprano line. But since we are in a minor key, our descending soprano line uses the pitches do, te, le, and sol. Once again, the Roman numerals to harmonize these descending stepwise scale degrees would be minor 1, major 3 chord, either a 2 diminished 6 or a minor 4 would be fine, and then a 5 chord. And again, I just took my 5 chord to a tonic for an authentic cadence, but you don't necessarily have to do that if you want to end with a half cadence. So again, do, te, le, sol. The Roman numerals would be 1, 3, 4, or 2 diminished 6, and 5 in a minor key. Therefore, the bass line would be do, me, fa, sol. The next example in A minor asks you to illustrate either the capital 7 or the major 7 triad in root position or in first inversion. I decided to illustrate the major 7 triad in first inversion. And using, if I want to harmonize or use the major 7 triad in first inversion, that is a 7-6 chord, my bass line should be ascending in the bass. So down in the bass clef here I have do, re, mi, fa, and sol. With an ascending bass line, I can use the Roman numerals 1, 7, 6, 3, again 4 or 2 diminished 6, and then you can follow with a 5 or a cadential 6, 4, and a 5. And you can eventually go to 1. It depends on how far you want to go with your progression. As long as you end on a half cadence, I think that's sufficient. But you must remember that with the 7 in first inversion, 7-6, it harmonizes an ascending bass line. Do, re, mi, fa, sol. Therefore, the chords once again would be 1, 7, 6, 3, 4, or 2 diminished 6, and then 5. In order to illustrate a passing 6-4 chord in this major key, G major, what I did is I started on a 1 chord and I got to a 1-6 chord, or a first inversion 1, by way of sticking a bass note in between those 2 bass notes. And this bass note in between is going to create a 3-note stepwise motion. Here I have G, A, and B. The chord on the first bass note would be 1. The chord on the third bass note would be the first inversion of that same chord, 1-6. And then the note in the bass in the middle is going to harmonize or be part of a passing 6-4 chord. A passing 6-4 chord. Remember that passing 6-4 chords work best by filling in the space between the root position and the first inversion of the same chord. Okay. It can be 1 passing 6-4, 1-6 like I have here, or you could have the reverse, 1-6 passing 6-4, 1. Passing 6-4 chords can also connect the bass notes of 2 different chords, and that's certainly possible as well. But if you're finding it hard to remember how to use the passing 6-4, I would just remember to use it in between 2 different inversions, the root position and first inversion of the same chord. Okay. So generally when you have a passing 6-4 chord, what I did is I wrote a voice exchange in my soprano voice. So here the bass goes G, A, B, but the soprano does the reverse, B, A, G. The voice exchange does not have to be in the soprano voice with the bass. It could be in any upper voice with the bass voice. But in order to use a passing 6-4, once again, it's very important and paramount that you remember there needs to be 3-note stepwise motion in the bass. After I got to 1-6, I just finished off with an authentic cadence. I wrote 5-4-2-1-6. I think anything that you use that makes sense or that uses a common cadence would be fine here. The main thing that I'm concerned about is that you used the passing 6-4 correctly. In order to illustrate the neighbor 6-4 chord, we need to remember that the bass does not move. The bass remains static or stationary surrounding a neighbor 6-4 chord. So you might ask, well, where is the neighbor motion then? Well, the neighbor motion, which gives the chord its name, happens to occur in two of the upper voices. I actually wrote my soprano voice, one of my upper voices, to include the neighbor motion. I have a third above the bass, then I have a fourth above the bass, goes up by step, and then back down to where it started from, a third above the bass. In the key of B flat major, then what that's going to produce is going to be the root position 1, the neighbor 6/4, and then the root position 1. The primary things to remember in order to write a neighbor 6/4 chord correctly: keep the bass static or stationary on both sides of the bass note of your neighbor 6/4 chord. Make sure that you spell, when you part write a chord in here, make sure that it is a second inversion triad. And then last but not least, make sure that the chord before the N6/4 and the chord after the N6/4 is exactly the same. The same chord, the same bass position, the same everything. After that, I decided to use a secondary dominant to lead to another authentic cadence. But again, that's up to you, as long as you make a pretty standard cadence or some chords that work in the function way that we learned. That should be fine. Again, I'm just concerned about the neighbor 6/4 part of your progression. Finally, illustrating a minor 5/6 chord. That, of course, would occur only in a minor key, and we are in D minor for this example. The minor 5/6 chord must be used to harmonize a descending bass line, a descending stepwise bass line. So in D minor, I have Do, Te, La, Sol. The Te, the second note of that descending stepwise bass line in a minor key, the Te is the one that is harmonized by the minor 5/6 chord. So Do, Te, La, Sol is harmonized with 1 minor 5/6, minor 4/6, and then a capital 5 or capital 5/7. Once again, you must remember that the minor 5/6 only goes to the minor 4/6. The minor 5/6 does not progress or move to any other chord except for the minor 4/6. Also, in the descending bass line Do, Te, La, Sol, instead of using a minor 5/6, you can just as well use a root position capital 7 chord. That would also harmonize Te in the bass. So these two chords, the capital 7 in root position and the minor 5/6, are interchangeable. Both of them work to harmonize a descending bass line, Do, Te, La, Sol. The next section of the review on the next page tells us to spell the following chords and, if necessary, identify the key. Notice there are no key signatures included in these measures because, for the most part, you have to identify the key yourself. There are a few cases where I identify the key for you. How do you identify the key when you don't have a key signature and all you have is a chord? Well, we're going to identify the key by the quality or the type of the chord. And these things we focused on and we learned this semester. So I'm hoping that you have this memorized, or you at least know where to find the information for the actual final exam. For instance, the first measure gives us an A in the bass and tells us that that's supposed to be a 7 fully diminished 7 chord in root position. So, number one, we know because it's 7 fully diminished 7, we know we're in a minor key. 7 fully diminished 7s only occur in minor keys. 7 half diminished sevenths occur only in major keys. So we know we're in a minor key. Also, because we're given the bass note, A, we know that because this chord is in root position, we know A is the root of my leading tone 7th chord, and that makes A the leading tone of the key I'm trying to find. So if A is the leading tone of the key, that means the tonic is only a half step above A, and that means the tonic note is B flat. And as I said, we're already in a minor key, we know that, so the key is B flat minor. Okay, so spelling a root position, fully diminished 7th chord on the bass note A, we need A, C, E flat, and G flat. And we need E flat and G flat with the accidentals to make the 7th chord fully diminished, stacking all minor thirds, A, C, E flat, G flat. The next measure, I've given you the key. A major is the key, and I want you to spell a 5/7 of a 6 in the key of A major. Well, let's read through this symbol, this analysis symbol first. I find the root of the chord to the right of the slash first. It makes sense in my head that way the best. So what is the root of a 6th chord? And the 6th chord does belong in A major. Well, that means the root of this chord is going to be F sharp, because a 6th chord in A major, that it begins on, and that has the root F sharp. So now, what is F sharp's dominant pitch? That will give us the root of the 5/7 we're trying to spell. Go up a perfect fifth from F sharp, and you should get the note C sharp. That's the root of the 5/7 chord we're trying to spell. And once again, 5/7 chords are always dominant 7th or major minor 7th chords. So I know how to spell a major minor 7th chord on C sharp, and it's in root position, so C sharp is on the bottom. I need C sharp, E sharp, G sharp, and B. Don't worry about the space, don't worry about the voicing necessarily of the notes, just as long as you have in here the notes C sharp, E sharp, G sharp, and B. Remember, to spell a major minor 7th chord, you need a major third above the root. Then you need a minor third above that note, and then another minor third stacked above that note. So C sharp, E sharp, G sharp, and B. That'll do it. The next measure, I have another fully diminished 7th chord, so I know I'm in a minor key. Notice though that the bass note I'm given is C sharp, and that my 7/7 chord is in first inversion. Well, if my 7/7 chord is in first inversion, and the bass note given me is C sharp, that means this is the third of the chord, not the root. How do I find the root? Well, the root is going to be a minor third below C sharp. What note is a minor third below C sharp? That is the pitch A sharp. How do I know it's going to be a minor third below? Well, because when I spell fully diminished 7th chords, it's all stacked minor thirds. So a minor third below C sharp is A sharp. That's the root of this chord. And if A sharp, or since A sharp is the root of a leading tone 7th chord, that means A sharp is the leading tone of the key I should be working in. Okay, what is a half step above A sharp? If A sharp is scale degree 7, the leading tone, or T, then the tonic note should be B, just a half step above A sharp. And if the tonic is B, then I am in B minor. B minor. Alright, so spelling a fully diminished 7th chord with a root of A sharp and putting it in first inversion. A sharp, C sharp, E, G, with the C sharp on the bottom. Again, don't worry about the placement of your notes necessarily. It'd be nice if you could use proper spacing for four voice part writing, even though we're not part writing from measure to measure. But as long as you have A sharp C sharp on the bottom, and then an E and a G in the chord. The next measure, we have a 5-4-3 with a G sharp in the bass. Okay, now a 5-4-3 chord, that is a major minor 7th chord. And 4-3 means the G sharp is the 5th of the chord. The 5th of the chord, because second inversion, 4-3. The 5th of the chord is the lowest sounding tone. So now if G sharp is the 5th of the chord, then the root of the chord is going to be a 5th lower. C sharp, a perfect 5th lower. Okay. If the root of this 5 chord is C sharp, that means C sharp is scale degree 5, which means we are in the key of F sharp, right? If C sharp is scale degree 5, C sharp, B, A, G, and F. F sharp must be the tonic. Now because capital 5-7 chords appear and occur normally in both major and minor keys, all I can say for sure is that the key for this measure must be F sharp major or F sharp minor. It could be either one just as easily. You know, it could be as easily F sharp minor as it could be F sharp major and vice versa. It doesn't matter whether we're in F sharp major or F sharp minor, because dominant 7th chords are spelled as major minor 7th chords regardless. Okay? So if C sharp is the root again, to spell a major minor 7th chord on C sharp, I need C sharp, E sharp, G sharp, and plain B. C sharp, E sharp, G sharp, B. And those are the notes I have here, making sure that the G sharp is the lowest sounding pitch so that it is in 2nd or 4-3 inversion. The next measure you have gives you an E in the bass, and it asks you to spell a 2 half diminished 7th chord. Okay? First of all, we know that this symbol, 2 half diminished 7, means the chord is in root position. That means E is the root of the chord, and that also means then that E is scale degree 2 of the key I'm working in. If E is scale degree 2, I must be in the key of D. That would be scale degree 1, or tonic. Well, if it's a half diminished 7th chord, am I in a major key or a minor key? These things we learned this semester. 2 half diminished 7s normally diatonically occur in minor keys only. So that means the key I'm working in must be D minor, not D major. To spell a half diminished 7th chord on E, I need E, G, B flat, that's a diminished triad, and then E up to plain D is a minor 7th. So a diminished triad with a minor 7th makes a half diminished 7th chord. So I have E, G, B flat, and D. Again, as long as your spacing is fine between the treble and the bass staff, and you have E as the lowest note, you're good. E, G, B flat, D. This next measure that I have on my screen I did not give you because we haven't learned these chords yet, so I just crossed it out. You do have one more measure in this section, however. I've given you the key as E flat major, and I'm asking you to spell a 5-6-5 of 2. Let's find the root of the 2 chord first. The 2 chord does normally rightly belong in the key of E flat, so a 2 chord in E flat major would have a root of F. That's the 2nd scale degree. Okay, this is an F minor chord. What is the pitch F? What is its dominant pitch? Well, go up a perfect 5th from F, and you should get the note C. C is the dominant of F. So that means the root of this chord is C. And we're supposed to spell a dominant 7th on C. A major minor 7th on C is C, E, G, B flat. Putting it in first inversion, that means the E goes on the bottom. So I have an E here. By the way, if you can't see that, I have a natural on my E in parentheses. You do not need to have this accidental on the E since we're not dealing with key signatures. If we were spelling it in a measure with the key signature of E flat, you would have to have a natural on the E. But again, since we don't have the key signatures, it's not necessary. Anyways, E natural should be on the bottom, and then you just place your other chord tones using good spacing. I have C and G and B flat here. So it's really, I have the root in the alto, C, and then E on the bottom, and then G in the soprano, and I have B flat in the tenor. That makes a major minor seventh chord on C, and it is in first inversion. So the next section of your review handout deals with transposition. I've given you one transposition exercise to work through here, and I'm asking you on a separate sheet of staff paper to arrange this progression here for trumpet in B flat, horn in F, trombone, and tuba. Okay. Now, I've also indicated to you that these pitches, or the music right here is at concert pitch. That means everything is at actual sound. The piano would be able to play this, all the parts, and it would sound harmonious. It would sound wonderful together. Okay? So we're given actual sound. What we need to do is we need to find out which of these four instruments is a transposing instrument, and then we need to find out how that instrument transposes and which direction we need to go to write for it. Okay. All right, so these are the four instruments: trumpet in B flat, horn in F, trombone, and tuba. I hope you know that the trombone and the tuba do not transpose. So the bass and the tenor line in this original example, you do not have to adjust any of the pitches. When you arrange this for these four separate instruments, you can just copy the bass in for the tuba, and you can just copy the tenor line in the trombone part. No change of key signature, no change of notes, no nothing. But we do know that the trumpet in B flat and the horn in F, they are transposing instruments. Okay? So it looks like the trumpet in B flat has these higher notes, the soprano notes, and the horn in F is given the alto pitches in this example. Well, we should know that a trumpet in B flat sounds a major second lower than written. But this is actual sound. So how should we then write the correct notes for a trumpet in B flat? If it sounds a major second lower than written, then we need to write the notes and the key up a major second. In other words, we need to take all these notes and we need to take the key and we need to go up a whole step or up a major second to write the correct pitches for the transposing trumpet in B flat. All right, we're in the key of D minor. What minor key is a whole step or a major second above D minor? I hope you get the answer of E minor. And E minor has one sharp. So on your separate staff paper, you're going to put on, for the trumpet, you're going to put down E minor's key signature, or one sharp, and then the notes you're going to write for the trumpet in B flat are not going to be F, G, E, but rather they are going to be G, A, and F sharp. And then you would have a whole step above this, which is E, another E. Here you would have to have a D sharp, and then finish off with an E. Okay. The horn in F transposes down a perfect fifth. That means the French horn sounds a perfect fifth lower than written. That would get us actual pitch or concert pitch. But we already have actual pitch or concert pitch. So in order to write the correct note for the horn in F, if it sounds a fifth lower than it's notated, then we need to notate it a fifth higher than its sound, actual sound. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all these actual sound notes and we're going to go up a perfect fifth for all of them and write those notes in the horn part on our separate piece of staff paper. And we're also going to transpose the key signature up a perfect fifth. So again, the concert key or non-transposing key is D minor. When we go up a perfect fifth from D minor, we should get the key of A minor, which is no flats and no sharps. Okay. So for your horn in F staff, you need no key signature, no flats, no sharps, but the first note you write is going to be the E in the top space of the staff, and then you're going to write an F on the top line, and then an E in the top space, and a C above there, and then G up a perfect fifth is D, E up a perfect fifth is B, and F up a perfect fifth is C. And those would be the notes you need to write for the horn in F in order to get this alto part to come out of the horn, the actual sound. Now, the last part of the instructions may have been confusing. These instruments, as they're listed over here, they're not actually listed in orchestral score order. So this is something you'll learn about when you take arranging, instrumental arranging, instrumentation, that kind of thing. So I'm not really as concerned about it, but this would be the correct order for orchestral instruments. The horn in F you would actually list on top, and then the trumpet in B flat staff would be second, then the trombone, and then the tuba, rather than the trumpet in B flat first. But it's not a big deal. As long as you have, for your trumpet staff, as long as you have an E minor key signature, and you're starting with G, A, and F sharp. And for the horn in F staff, as long as you have no flats, no sharps in the key signature, and you're starting with the pitches, the written pitches, E and F and E, then you should be okay. That's what mine looks like, my final answer. Again, I put the horn on the top. That is correct orchestral score order. But notice my horn has no flats, no sharps, and I start out with E, F, and E, and I continue to follow suit. And the trumpet in B flat is in the key of E minor, notated E minor, so one sharp in the key signature, and its opening pitches are G, A, and F sharp, and then I continue from there. Remember, we talked about using a D sharp towards the end. And the trombone line and the tuba lines are just copied from the original example on the review sheet. No transposition or adjustments needed. The next section of the review involves part writing with figured bass, and I can tell you that there will be a relatively lengthy part writing example like this with just the bass notes and figured bass for you to fill in all the voices for. That will be on the actual final exam. So if you need to brush up on your figured bass, understanding what that means and how to read that, please do so, because there will be an example similar to this on the test, on the final exam. At any rate, what you should come up with when you analyze and fill out the figures and realize the chords in here, you should get this chord progression. These are my Roman numerals. 1, minor 4, 2, half diminished 6/5, capital 5, 4/2, 1/6, passing 6/4, a couple minor 1 chords, then 7 fully diminished 7, 1, and then 5. So this passage ends with a 5 chord, therefore it ends on a half cadence. Now, your melody line or your soprano line could easily be different than mine. That's perfectly fine. And if your melody line is different than mine, then your inner voices probably won't be exactly like mine either. However, there are some things I want you to be aware of and I want you to check your own part writing for, because these would have to be true and present in your part writing no matter what. First of all, in the 2 half diminished 6/5 chord, that is a 7th chord. 2 7 chords have one tendency tone, and that tendency tone is the 7th of the chord. And the 7th of the chord always goes down by step. So, this chord is an A, C, E flat, G chord. That makes G the 7th. I have G in the soprano, but wherever you happen to have the G, check, does your G go down by step to F sharp in the next chord? G must go down to F sharp in whatever voice those notes are present. Also remember that the sharp by itself means to put this accidental, apply it to the note that is a third above the bass. Third above the bass, so I need an F sharp. Here in the 5/4-2 chord, the chord 7th, it's a D, F sharp, A, C chord. The 7th of the chord, the C, is in the bass, and it does go down by step. I've taken care of that for you. Remember that 5/4-2 goes to 1/6 always. I happen to have T of the key, or the leading tone. Remember, I'm in G minor. Here's the leading tone, F sharp. I happen to have that in an outer voice, so that goes up by step to G, to the tonic. When I part write this passing 6/4 3-chord progression, notice the 3-note stepwise motion in the bass. Notice that this sharp means to apply a sharp or add a sharp to the note that is a 6th above the bass. So that's why I have a sharp on my F. And I just pointed this out. You do not have to do that, but here's my voice exchange. Mine happens to occur between the bass and the soprano. If yours occurs between the bass and another upper voice, that is perfectly fine. My bass goes B flat, A, G, but my soprano goes the reverse, G, A, B flat. What do we double in all second inversion triads? We double the bass note. So I need another A in this chord, and I happen to have another A right there. No exceptions. Always double the bass note of a triad, any triad, in second inversion. Alright, as we go further here, the part writing is pretty standard. The only other chord that requires special attention, I believe, is this 7 fully diminished 7th chord. Putting the notes correctly on the staff, you'll have F sharp, A, C, E flat. And the 7 fully diminished 7th chord has 2 tendency tones, just like the dominant 7th chord did. The root of a 7/7 chord is the leading tone of the key. You can see that that F sharp is T of the key of G minor. That has to go up by step, and it does. I took it there for you because I gave you the bass. But also, this chord has a chord 7th. And you must remember, whenever you part write, especially on this exam, if there's a 7th in a 7th chord, you have to find that note, whatever voice it's in, and take it down by step. So my F sharp, A, C, E flat chord means that the E flat is the 7th member of the chord. And then my E flat happens to be in the alto voice, and my E flat must go down to D. So what I'm saying is that for your part writing, whatever voice you have your E flat in, your E flat has to go down by step to D in this next chord, in this tonic chord. The rest of the part writing is pretty self-explanatory. Notice this passage ends with a half cadence. It ends on a 5 chord. But I do want to reiterate again, remember that 5/7 chords, and in whatever inversion they may be, they have 2 tendency tones, and then 7 diminished 7 chords have 2 tendency tones as well, a chord 7th and a leading tone, just like the 5/7. But then also the 2/7 chord has 1 tendency tone, and that's just the 7th of the chord. Remember, leading tones of the key, they generally go up by step. 7ths of the chord, in whatever voice they occur in, they go down by step. the opposite direction. Let me play this example for you. I know your part writing might not be exactly like mine, but at least you can hear how it goes. Okay, we're in G minor. So last but not least, the final section of your exam review is a passage from a Beethoven piano sonata. And I believe in the instructions I've asked you to analyze measures, looks like 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 12 through 17 with Roman numerals. Analyze measures 12 through 17 with Roman numerals. I also wanted you to graph the form of measures 1 through 8 only. Measures 1 through 8. Now remember, because this final exam is cumulative, remember we did study form a while back in the first unit of this semester. And remember that the normal length of a phrase is generally 4 measures long, sometimes 8 measures long, and they can also be different lengths too, but generally 4 measures long is the standard. 8 is a close second, 8 measures long for a phrase. Anyways, I have 2 phrases here between measures 1 through 8. How do I know that? Well, I gave you the Roman numerals for the cadence at the end of the in the fourth measure. So that means we have one phrase goes from measures 1 to 4, and there's the cadence chord. And then another phrase, a second phrase, goes from measures 5 to 8. And here are the cadence chords for that phrase. So we have 2 phrases. And remember, when we graph form, we use arcs for slurs, or slurs for phrases, I should say. So I have 2 arcs or slurs. Let me see if I can raise that for you so you can see it a little better. The first phrase is I label A. That's always going to be the label, lowercase letters. The second phrase is not, the melody is not like, and it does not sound like the first phrase. So I labeled the second phrase lowercase b. It's different. Remember to include the first measure number of each phrase in your graph. So the first measure of the piece or the first phrase is 1. The first measure of phrase 2 is measure 5. We are in C minor, and you want to include the fact that the first phrase ends with a half cadence. Okay, half cadence. You can see the last chord in the first phrase is a 5 chord. That means there's a half cadence. And the last 2 chords in phrase 2 are 5 to 1. And it looks like the 5 chord is in root position. It's got a G in the bass. And the 1 chord is in root position. It has a C in the bass. And there is a Do, or C, the tonic note, is in the highest voice over the tonic chord. These notes over here are pickups to the next phrase. Don't worry about those. So C is the highest note in the soprano over the final 1 chord. That means we have a half cadence in C minor at the end of this phrase, and a perfect authentic cadence in C minor at the end of the second phrase. Putting that information together, I hope you recall that when you have 2 phrases where the cadence of the second phrase is stronger than the cadence of the first phrase, that is what we call a period. A period. And there are multiple terms used to describe a period. We can have the melodic content of the period can be parallel or contrasting. Notice that it is contrasting in this case because my labels are A and B, not A and A prime. If the labels were A and A prime, that would be a parallel period. But since it is not, it's A and B, I have a contrasting period. The two terms that are used to describe the harmonic content or the key of your period are the terms progressive and complete. Progressive and complete. Because this period stays in the key of C minor the entire way through, it does not change key, I will say that this is a complete period. It is a complete period. If the period were to modulate or change key somewhere in the midst of this period, then it would be a progressive period. A progressive period. But since it stays in the same key, it is a complete period. So my final answer for the form is a contrasting complete period. I hope you remember some of these things, how we graphed form and the terms we use to label form. If you don't, go back in your notes. Go back and look at your previous homework assignments. Go back and look at any previous test reviews, that kind of thing, so that you can get that straight in your mind before the exam. A couple other things before I leave this page. I do want to tell you the Roman numeral analysis of measures 12 through 17. The first chord that you need in measure 12 happens to be a secondary dominant because it is C, E, G, and B flat. It's got an accidental B flat. That is a 5/7 of a minor 4. That's what your Roman numeral should be for that measure. Then we have some regular diatonic chords in the last line. We have a minor 4 here, a regular 5/7, and a capital 6. But then the next chord also is another secondary dominant. Why? Because we have E natural as an accidental, just like we had E natural as an accidental here. Don't ask me why they have the flat on the B. It's probably because there was a B natural in the previous measure. That is not actually an accidental according to the key of C minor. The E natural is, and that's what gives it away that it is not like some kind of 1/7 chord. See, we don't write 1/7 chords. 1/7 chords tend to be 5/7 of 4. And that's what it is. Here, we have a 5/7 of 4 also because of the E natural. It's C, E, G, B flat. But this one happens to be in second inversion. See, the G is the lowest note. So I write 5/4/3 of the regular minor 4. And it goes to a minor 4, just like this 5/7 of 4 goes to a 4. So minor 4, capital 5, and then there's 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. That's what you should have there to fill out the analysis. Okay. Again, the fact that these two chords contain an accidental and E natural, that's what tells us that the chord is a secondary dominant. Because that's the only chromatic chord we know. Okay, let's see if we can listen to a little bit of this passage. I do have it set up on YouTube here, so let's just listen to that quickly. So we don't have time to listen to the whole piano movement. Okay, we are getting close to the end of this review. I probably don't have much time left on this video camera, but one thing I did want to mention is in addition to these things we reviewed on this worksheet, I want you to also have memorized the chart that we have talked about so many times this semester. In other words, what does 5/7 progress to? What is 5/6/5? What is 5/4/3? what does 5-4-2 go to? Right? And then similarly, what does 7 diminished 7 go to? What does 7 diminished 6-5 go to? What does 7 diminished 4-3 go to? And what does 7 diminished 4-2 go to? This should be in your notes. You can look that up. Okay, this will be very helpful for the test. 5-7 goes to 1 or 6. That's all. 5-6-5 and 7 diminished 7 go to root position 1. 5-4-3 goes to 1 or 1-6, but 7 diminished 6-5 must go to 1-6, because otherwise parallel fifths or unequal fifths involving the base will be present, and we can't have that. So 7 diminished 6-5 must go to 1-6. 5-4-3 can go to either 1 or 1-6. Both of these chords, the 5-4-2 and the 7 diminished 4-3, go to 1-6. And finally, the 7 diminished 4-2 goes to 1-6-4, cadential 6-4, or 5-7. It's very important that you know this and have this information available in your mind for the test. And I think the last thing I want to just point out is I want to just give you a rundown and a quick review about what a double period is again. I hope you remember, or at least have it in your notes somewhere, that a double period normally contains or consists of 4 phrases. 4 phrases. As long as the cadence at the end of the very last phrase is stronger than the cadence at the end of the second phrase, that is sufficient to make the 4 phrases relate to each other in what's called a double period. A double period. Remember, the cadence at the end of phrase 2 must be weaker than the very last cadence in order for 4 phrases to relate to each other and go together to form a double period. Okay? We also know that, for instance, let's say we have some labels like this. Oops. We can describe double periods as parallel or contrasting, just like regular periods. The thing is with a double period is that there are not 2 periods, there is just 1 period. And so this is the antecedent and this half is the consequent. These 2 phrases form the question, and these 2 phrases form the answer or the consequent. Now, when deciding whether or not a double period is parallel or contrasting, just look at the beginnings of the question half and the answer half. Does this half start out at least similarly or like the beginning of the antecedent portion of the double period? The answer is yes. See, as long as the beginning of this half is like the beginning of this half, that's enough to say that the double period is parallel. It doesn't matter that the ending of this half is different than the ending of this half. As long as the 2 halves start out the same, that's enough to say that the whole form is parallel in construction. Finally, let's assume there is no, we're going to be in C major the whole way, so let's assume there is no modulation or change of key. So we could have things like this, and it doesn't affect my double period at all, because this cadence is weaker than the last cadence. That's what makes it a double period. And so if there's no change of key throughout, I would say that this is a parallel complete double period. If there was a change of key somewhere within any of these 4 phrases, I would call it a parallel progressive double period. The terms are the same. But I want you to recognize that if you have 4 phrases with a weaker cadence at the end of the second phrase, and the strongest cadence at the end of the final phrase,